I've often discussed inequality and the pandemic. Many people talk about the pandemic and inequality, but let me give you a kind of quintessence of inequality, some real evidence that backs it up. Last Friday, the World Trade Organization had, I assume, a major virtual meeting, and they were discussing something called TRIPS, the acronym TRIPS. And what it means is the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? But essentially what it is the provision in the World Trade Organization agreement that provides patent protection for pharmaceutical companies and the ways in which governments can respond to that protection. So what happened last Friday? It was quite fascinating. The entire debate, which raged for 3 hours, was based on a resolution submitted by India, South Africa, and Kenya, and a whole passel of low-income and middle-income countries. From Argentina and Venezuela in Latin America, to Nicaragua and Honduras in Central America, to Indonesia and Bangladesh and Nepal and Asia. All these countries got together, and what they said was so logical and persuasive, it's truly admirable. They said, look, waive the provisions around the TRIPS just for the course of the pandemic. We need to have access to medicines, to diagnostics, to therapeutics, to vaccines, to PPE. We need all of that at reasonable cost. And the patent protection for the drug companies raises the cost and makes it almost impossible for us to function in the midst of this so-called global pandemic, which is supposed to show global solidarity. And they made the argument vigorously and well. And they pointed out that there was a precedent. In the early days of HIV, the rich countries had the wealth sufficient to provide treatment for their citizens, but the poor countries didn't have the money to provide the treatment, and as a result, the carnage was dreadful. So all of these low and middle income countries made the argument to the World Trade Organization, and they said, look, we're not asking that this happen endlessly. We're just saying waive the provisions of TRIPS just for the purpose of the pandemic itself. And when a vaccine discovered and it comes to an end and there is immunity around the world, then reinstate the provisions of TRIPS. We won't mind at all. And of course they were fiercely opposed. Who opposed them? Well, the European Union, the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, Canada, the same list of rogue characters that always opposes equality in this world. And you think that's all? Well, just 2 days earlier, the G20 had met, the 20 most wealthy and influential countries in the world, and they'd said that they would allow an extension on the moratorium of debt repayments until the middle of 2021. But of course, the low-income and middle-income countries had begged for debt cancellation, and they weren't going to get it. This business of inequality, this old-time colonialism, is raising its head on every front around the pandemic. It's absolutely intolerable, and it's a monumental grievance. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.